She didn't expect her world to end under a full moon. Not like this. Not in front of the whole damn pack. But the thing about heartbreak? It doesn't wait for privacy. It shatters you in public, in ceremony, in front of the ones who never believed in you anyway. Era Langley stood at the edge of the sacred circle, the cold biting into her skin through the thin fabric of her ceremonial dress. The night was too quiet, too still, like the forest itself knew something awful was about to happen. Wolves surrounded the ring, dressed in white and silver, their faces painted with lunar dust, their eyes sharp with curiosity. 3 packs had gathered here, all waiting, watching, some with hope, some with judgment. Her fingers curled at her sides. She'd waited 3 years for this. 3 years watching other wolves meet their mates, bond under the full moon, step into the circle and claim a future together. 3 years she'd stood in the shadows, the Omega who never belonged, always a little too quiet, a little too soft, a little too forgettable. But tonight, the moment their eyes met, she felt it, like a string pulled taut between them, like a current crawling beneath her skin. Alpha Kaelin Thornridge, the heir of Thornshade Pack, 25 years old, ruthless in the field, respected by elders, and terrifying in the way only true alphas could be. He was standing across the circle, his shoulders squared, his expression unreadable. But his scent, pine smoke and storm wind, hit her like fire. Their eyes locked, and the bond snapped into place. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't gentle. It seized her chest and dragged her forward a single step, breath caught in her throat. Her heart skipped, then kicked hard. Her wolf, usually quiet, usually buried under years of suppression, stirred and let out a low, aching sound. Mate. Her mate. The moon goddess had chosen. For one blissfully perfect heartbeat, the entire world narrowed to just them. Just him. The connection humming through her like music, golden threads winding between their souls. He felt it. She knew he did. She saw it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his hand twitched slightly at his side, the way something flickered in his eyes. Not softness, not warmth, but fear. Then, his whole face hardened. He took a step forward and spoke the words that broke her. "I, Alpha Kaelin Thornridge," he said, his voice carrying across the sacred stones like thunder, "reject you as my mate." The gasp that echoed through the clearing was immediate, brutal. Even the elders flinched. Era's legs buckled, but she didn't fall. She couldn't. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred at the edges. Every heartbeat pounded like a scream inside her chest. Her wolf recoiled. The bond, barely formed, brand new, snapped. Pain shot through her so violently that she had to press a hand against her ribs just to stay standing. Kaelin didn't stop. "She's weak," he said. "An Omega with no training, no strength. I won't bind myself to someone who can barely shift. Thornshade needs a Luna who can lead, not one who falls apart under pressure." Laughter followed. Not kind, sharp, cruel. Era's shoulders locked. Her nails dug into her palms. She couldn't breathe. She glanced around the circle, searching for one familiar face. Her older brother, eyes down, arms crossed. Her mother, already gone. Her father, stone-faced among the elders, pretending she wasn't even his. She was alone. And worse, she'd always been. Era raised her chin. Her throat burned. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out anyway. "I accept your rejection." Silence dropped. The bond tore. Not gently, not cleanly, like something divine being ripped away before it could root. The pain wasn't metaphorical. It was real. A searing snap that went through her bones. Her knees nearly gave out. The forest tilted. Her lungs stopped working for a moment too long. But she didn't fall. She would never let them see her fall. Kaelin turned away before the echo of her voice had even faded. He walked toward Lyra Vane, tall, elegant, perfectly bred, and slipped his arm around her like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. She leaned in and laughed. At what? Era didn't know. Probably at her. The crowd shifted. The next name was called. The next wolves stepped into the circle, like Era had never existed, like her whole world hadn't just been split open and left bleeding on ceremonial stone. She backed out of the ring, step by step, body trembling. Just get out. Get out of here. Get away before... Then it happened. A flutter, low in her stomach, faint, too faint for anyone else to notice, but she felt it. She froze. One hand flew to her abdomen, another flutter, stronger, warmer. Her blood turned to ice. It couldn't be. Not now. Not here. But it was. She knew. Somehow, deep in her bones, deep in her wolf, she knew. 2 heartbeats, not 1. 2. Twins. Her breath hitched. Her mouth went dry. That night, the celebration, the blurred memories, the bonfire, the voice, the hands, the golden eyes. It hadn't been a dream. It had been real. She didn't remember his name, didn't know who he was, but the bond that hadn't formed tonight, it had formed then, in the dark, in secret, and now she was carrying his twins. The crowd began to shift again. Attention moved on. She was invisible once more. But someone was watching her. From the trees. She felt it before she saw him. A prickle on her skin. A scent that didn't belong here. Rain on warm stone. Cedarwood. Fire. He stepped from the shadows. Tall. Broad shoulders. Golden eyes glowing under the moonlight. Her wolf rose inside her, startled, confused, hopeful. "You," she whispered, because she knew. Somewhere inside, her soul knew him. He didn't smile, didn't soften. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was low, quiet, urgent. "Before they find out what you're carrying." Her pulse stopped. "How do you know?" "Because they're mine," he said. "The twins. They're mine. Make sure to like, subscribe, and drop where you're watching from. 2 weeks ago, everything had felt different. The music had been loud, the fire had been high, the moon had been full but gentle, not sharp like tonight. The whole clearing had smelled like crushed herbs and cedarwood and wine. That night wasn't supposed to matter. It was the pre-ceremony celebration, a harmless tradition where unmated wolves mingled, danced, drank too much of the moon wine, and let themselves pretend for just one night that destiny could be softened. Era remembered flashes, not details, just fragments. A blur of gold and fire, a voice, hands steadying her as she stumbled, and those eyes, those golden, glowing eyes that had pierced right through her just hours ago in the woods. It hadn't been a dream. It had been him. Raiden. She still didn't know his full name, didn't know what pack he belonged to, if he even had one. But she knew that scent. She knew it now like her own heartbeat. And she knew he wasn't just some stranger from a forgotten night. He was the father of both of them. She sat alone in a borrowed motel bathroom, knees pressed to the cold tile floor, staring at the faint silver lines on her stomach that hadn't been there a week ago. Not stretch marks, not scars. Something else. Something ancient. Her fingers trembled as she reached out to trace one, and her skin hummed beneath her touch. Her wolf stirred. She hadn't said a word since the rejection, had gone quiet in a way that made Era think she might be grieving too. But now? Now she was Waiting? Era swallowed hard and leaned back against the door. The pack doctor's words echoed in her ears like a curse she couldn't outrun. This shouldn't be possible. That had been 3 days before the ceremony. The doctor had called her in for a routine checkup, something all unmated wolves over 21 had to do before the bond trials. She hadn't been expecting anything unusual. Maybe low iron. Maybe another lecture about her weak aura. But the moment the doctor saw the results, she'd gone pale. The pregnancy was confirmed. The hormone levels were spiked. And worst of all, 2 distinct, synchronized heartbeats. Twins, she'd whispered, as if saying it too loudly might tear the world in half. Era had laughed. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Omegas didn't carry twins. Their wolves couldn't handle it. The energy requirements were too high. Even Luna-ranked females rarely managed it naturally. And Era? She was just Era Langley, the daughter of a washed-out beta and a mother who'd died in madness. The pack runt, the quiet girl who blended into walls. But the doctor hadn't been wrong. The flutters had started days later, soft, like moth wings at first, then stronger. Now they were constant, not painful, not yet, but undeniable. Era wasn't just pregnant. She was carrying miracle children that shouldn't exist, children fathered by a stranger with golden eyes who'd appeared out of nowhere just as she was about to break. And that stranger? He knew what she was carrying. The knock came soft. Twice. She froze, heart thudding. Cassian's voice slipped through the door. "You still breathing in there?" Era exhaled shakily. "Barely." "Eat something," he said. "Then we talk." She opened the door and blinked at him. He looked human enough. Flannel shirt, sharp jaw, tired eyes. But something about him was off. He smelled like old trees and ash. Like someone who didn't quite belong to this world but hadn't left it either. He handed her a wrapped sandwich and a bottle of water without saying anything else. She took them both, sat on the corner of the unmade bed and watched him lean against the window frame. "You said you're a rogue," she said, "but not really." He nodded once. "I'm half-blood, wolf mother, warlock father." That explained the wards in the room. The faint glowing symbols etched in salt around the windows and baseboards. The buzzing sensation against her skin when she crossed the threshold. "I don't usually help runaways," he added. "Too many of them lie. Too many bring trouble." "Why me?" she asked. Cassian reached into the drawer beside the bed and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Carefully, he unrolled it and handed it to her. A small silver pendant. It was hers. But she'd never seen it before. Her name was carved into the back. Just one word. E-R-A. Below it, a single sentence etched in harsh, angular script. "Keep them safe. They're more than heirs." There was no signature, just the letter K. She stared at it, her breath caught in her throat. "Kalen?" Cassian shook his head. "No, that's not his handwriting." She looked up sharply. "You've seen it before?" "I've seen it in the Moonstone archives," he said. "Old council records, royal bloodlines. This," he nodded toward the pendant, "isn't pack-made. It's priest-forged. Only a bonded mate could have left that for you." Her fingers curled around the silver. Her heart stuttered again. Not from fear, from something closer to understanding. Someone had left this for her, after that night, before the ceremony, before she was shattered in front of 3 packs and left to bleed in silence. Whoever they were, they knew. They knew what she was carrying. They knew what she was. And they were trying to protect her, or hide her, or maybe both. Cassian watched her, his gaze unreadable. "The wards won't hold forever. Someone will come looking for you." Era nodded slowly. "Let them. Because whoever had started this, they weren't just trying to control a ceremony. They were trying to erase something far older, far more dangerous than a broken mate bond. And she could feel it now. Not just life growing inside her, but power. Power she had never been allowed to touch. Power her wolf was finally waking up to. Power that someone had gone to great lengths to bury. So the real question wasn't how she'd gotten pregnant. It was why someone had made sure she never remembered who the father really was, and what they were willing to do when she finally did. The first howl came just after midnight. Low, sharp, too close. Not wild, not territorial. Tracking. Era shot upright in the dark motel room, hand instinctively flying to her stomach. Still. The twins were still. Quiet. Listening. Her wolf stirred. Not from fear. This was something else. A warning. The air changed in an instant. Something outside had crossed the line. Something not meant to be there. She barely had time to grab her pack before Cassian was at the door. "They've breached the outer ward," he said. 5 of them. Maybe more. She didn't ask who. She already knew. Kaylin's pack. Or worse. Whoever was behind the fake bond. The silencing. "Are they here to drag me back?" she asked, breath catching. Cassian didn't answer. He opened a small wooden box and grabbed a curved silver dagger, then tucked it into his belt. "You're not going back." His calm was unnerving. "You have 10 minutes," he said. "Anything you don't want to lose, take now." Era didn't have anything. Just a canvas bag with a change of clothes, the silver pendant, and the pregnancy test she couldn't throw away. Her fingers closed around it, white-knuckled. She didn't know if she was more afraid of what was coming for her, or what she was turning into. She shifted behind the gas station, not because she wanted to, because she had no other choice. The moment her bare feet touched the grass, her body tensed, trembling under the weight of what she was asking it to do. Shifting had always been painful. Small wolf, pale coat, slow reflexes. She'd heard the whispers since she was 10. Defective, weak, useless. And yet, tonight the transformation came faster. It still hurt, but it didn't feel wrong. Her bones cracked, her ribs stretched, her skin pulled like fire. But her wolf didn't whimper or hide. She rose, silent, larger than before, still lean, but stronger. The scent of silver ash filled her lungs as she ran. Cassian had opened a hidden back route through the woods, a line of neutral territory between the edges of packland and the unclaimed hills that bordered the human towns. The wind stung her eyes, the branches slapped her flanks, but she kept running, because if they caught her now, it wouldn't be exile. It would be containment, and not just for her, for them, the lives inside her, the ones kicking stronger every night. The twins were quiet now, conserving energy, but she felt them like a second heartbeat, not 2 little sparks anymore, but full flames. She was changing, and it wasn't just pregnancy. It was something in her blood, in her wolf, in the way her vision burned gold every time she closed her eyes. By sunrise, she couldn't shift back. Her body was too drained, too hot. She collapsed near a stream on the edge of the pine barrens, panting, her fur soaked in sweat and dew. And that's when the second scent hit her. Not the hunters. Him. That same wild, magnetic, dangerous pull from the woods outside the ceremony. The scent that tasted like lightning and cedar and the edge of a blade. Raiden. She rose, unsteady. Every nerve in her body snapped to attention. But he wasn't there. Not yet. She scented him on the wind, but it was fading. Like he'd passed through this place hours ago, not watching, not hunting, searching. She stumbled to her feet and shifted back, breath shallow, body shaking with exhaustion. Human again. Barely. The pendant around her neck pulsed once, then stilled. Whatever magic it carried, it had shielded her long enough, but it wouldn't hold forever. Hours passed. She walked until her legs gave out, collapsed behind an old truck stop just inside human territory. She barely made it into the women's restroom before vomiting. Her whole body rebelled. Not from sickness, something else. Something awakening. Her skin burned with fever. Her pulse thudded like a second drum beneath her veins. Her wolf paced, restless, no longer submissive. And then, a knock on the door. Soft. 3 raps. She froze. Again. This was becoming a pattern. She stood, grabbed the edge of the sink. "Occupied?" she rasped. A pause. Then a voice. Familiar, rougher than memory, but unmistakable. "You shouldn't be here alone." Her heart lurched. She turned slowly. The door creaked open. And there he was, Raiden, just like before, taller than she remembered, broader, hair damp from the rain, shirt stretched across his chest like it might rip from how tightly he was wound. Golden eyes locked on hers, and this time, no crowd, no ceremony, no distance, just them, and everything unsaid. He stepped inside. "Shut the door." "I told you we needed to talk," he said. "You didn't wait." She stared at him, couldn't find words, couldn't breathe. "I don't remember that night," she whispered. "Only flashes." He nodded once. "You weren't supposed to. Not yet." "What does that mean?" she asked. "What did you do to me?" Raiden looked away for the first time, jaw clenched, hands in fists. "I didn't do anything to you," he said softly. "I saved you." That was worse, because if he was telling the truth, then someone else had taken that memory, taken her choice, and buried it. She took a step back. "Saved me from what?" Raiden looked up. This time, his eyes weren't just glowing, they were burning. "From the pack that was never meant to claim you," his voice dropped. "And from the part of yourself they were terrified you might find." And now that she was remembering, there was no going back. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stood there inside that tiny restroom, silent, still, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with claws. Raiden, the stranger from the night she couldn't remember, the father of the twins now twisting inside her like live wire. Era's breath came shallow. She wanted to scream, or run, or shift, but her body wouldn't budge, not out of fear, because something inside her recognized him, not just her wolf, not just instinct, her bones. That quiet part of her that lived beneath the hurt, beneath the betrayal, beneath the lie that she was only ever going to be Omega. He took a slow step forward. She didn't stop him. "I didn't mean for you to remember yet," Raiden said, voice low, like every word hurt coming out. "But I guess the bond doesn't care about timing." She shook her head, pulse hammering. "I don't understand. You were there that night, at the ceremony, watching. Why?" He glanced toward the floor, jaw tense. "Because they weren't supposed to reject you." "They?" Her voice cracked. "Kaylin?" "No." His gaze snapped back to hers. "The ones pulling his strings." She stared. "You're saying he didn't reject me on his own?" Raiden looked at her like he wanted to reach for her, but didn't. "I'm saying someone made damn sure he did." The room felt smaller all at once. The rejection hadn't just been heartbreak. It had been orchestrated. "What do you know?" she asked. "Tell me everything. Now." He didn't hesitate. "You were marked," he said, "before you were born." She blinked. Marked for what? To be forgotten. The silence that followed wrapped around her like a noose. Raiden stepped closer. The heat of him hit her like fire in the cold. You're not just some Omega with bad luck and a broken bond. You're not supposed to be here, not in Silver Hollow, not in Thornshade. You were supposed to be hidden. From what? She whispered. From yourself. Era sat on the edge of the bed in the tiny roadside motel, hands shaking. Cassian was gone. Said he'd needed to clean something up in the wards. She didn't ask. She and Raiden hadn't spoken in 10 minutes, not since he told her the truth. Or at least the start of it. You were drugged, he said. Not just once. For years. By who? Her voice had cracked. Your own pack. The healer. The elders. Maybe even your own father. It had been too much. Too fast. But the more she sat with it, the more it made sense. The fog. The muted wolf. The way her instincts never fully worked. She'd thought she was broken. The truth was worse. She'd been tethered. Leashed. For what? She had asked. Raiden hadn't looked away when he answered. Because the truth of who you are would have made the wrong people very afraid. Now she sat staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror, pale skin flushed with fever, lips dry, stomach heavy with life. Not just twins, heirs. Raiden stood by the door, arms crossed, shoulders drawn tight. She hadn't asked him to stay. He just did. Why did you come to the ceremony? She asked finally. Why that night? He was quiet for a long time before answering. I was sent to find you. Her heart stuttered. By who? Raiden stepped forward, pulling something from inside his coat. A letter, old, folded, worn soft with time. He handed it to her. She opened it with trembling fingers. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. If you're reading this, she's alive. Keep her hidden. Watch for the mark. She won't know what she carries. But the goddess will guide her when the time is right. Protect the children. They're not just hers. They're Moonfire. And Moonfire was never truly extinguished. RM. Her hands trembled. She couldn't speak. Raiden sat across from her now, eyes softer. You weren't supposed to find out like this. But I saw the pendant. I knew what it meant. You knew before I did, she whispered. I felt the bond that night. I tried to get to you, but by then the damage was done. You left me. I didn't have a choice. Her eyes filled with heat, not tears, rage. Raw, rising, too long buried. She clutched the letter to her chest like it could hold her together. What's Moonfire? She asked, voice quiet, almost afraid of the answer. Raiden's expression changed, like someone just told him the war was about to begin. You, he said. You're Moonfire. There it was again. The thing in her blood. The strange heat. The strength that wasn't there before. The power her wolf now curled around protectively like it had been waiting for permission. You've been asleep your whole life, Raiden said gently. But they didn't destroy you. They just buried you. And now? She was starting to wake up. Era stood, shoulders stiff, spine straight. Everything she thought she was, every lie they'd fed her, it was gone now. She wasn't the fragile girl with the stunted wolf and the broken bond. She wasn't Kaylin's cast-off. She wasn't weak. She wasn't anyone's leftover. And her children? They were never meant to be secrets. They were meant to be seen. Meant to shift the balance of everything the Pax thought they understood. She looked Raiden in the eyes. Not with fear, with something more dangerous. Certainty. Then help me, she said. Help me remember everything they stole. Because the memories weren't lost. They were locked away. And something inside her had just found the key. The scent of blood hit first. Not sharp, not violent, but old, buried, like something sacred had been hidden and was starting to bleed through. Era stumbled as she crossed the threshold of the clearing Cassian had led them to, barefoot, sweating, the twins kicking like they knew they were close to something they weren't supposed to touch yet. She felt it in her skin. The land here was different. Raiden's jaw was clenched, his movements tighter than usual. Cassian hadn't said much since they left the motel, but the way he'd warded their path with salt and iron root told her this place wasn't just a sanctuary. It was sealed, protected, forgotten. "Where are we?" Era asked, breath ragged. Cassian stopped near a crumbling stone altar overgrown with ivy. His voice was quiet. "This is where the last Moonfire bloodline was sanctified. Before the purge. Before the name was wiped from the archives." Era blinked. "Moonfire isn't just a power. It's a family?" Raiden answered this time. It was a lineage, a divine one, a direct bloodline tied to the moon goddess herself. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She felt the pendant resting on her chest begin to pulse again, soft, like a heartbeat waking up under her skin. "You said they were all killed," she whispered. "They were," Raiden said. "Except one." The words dropped like a stone in her chest. Cassian turned toward her then, slow, deliberate. "That mark on your abdomen, the one that glows when you touch it, that's not a scar. It's a seal." Era's pulse jumped. "What does it mean?" Raiden stepped closer now. "It means you're not just carrying Moonfire. You are Moonfire." The silence between them snapped like a wire pulled too tight. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "That's not... No one ever said... My parents weren't..." "Your father was a beta who fell in love with a girl he wasn't allowed to claim," Cassian cut in. "She was sent away before the Pax found out what she was carrying." Era blinked, stunned. "My mother?" "She wasn't mad," Raiden said softly. "She was trying to protect you. The madness was the spell they used to silence her." Every memory Era had of her mother flashed behind her eyes like broken film. The way she'd scream at nothing, the way she'd whisper under her breath when the moon was full, the way she'd hold Era at night and hum songs no one else knew. Songs in a language Era couldn't remember, but her wolf did. She dropped to her knees. The earth buzzed beneath her palms. "You've been bleeding power since the bond broke," Cassian said. "That's why the twins are accelerating. They're feeding off what's been locked away inside you since you were born." She looked up. "And if it keeps growing?" Raiden's eyes darkened. "Then hiding won't be an option anymore." That night, she dreamed again. Not of fear. Not of rejection. Of before. A cradle made of bark and moonflowers. Her mother's voice, clear, strong, singing a name that didn't belong in the pack tongue. Symbols carved into stone, silver lights spinning in the air like threads, and a figure cloaked in black standing at the edge of the forest, watching. Era woke gasping, the pendant on her chest burned hot. Raiden was already up, sitting by the fire, watching her. "I saw her," she whispered. "My mother." He nodded once. "She left more than blood in you. She left memory, magic, and prophecy." Era sat up slowly. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from weight. The weight of everything she was finally starting to remember. Raiden reached into his coat and unrolled something wrapped in cloth. A book, ancient, leather-bound. Its cover etched with the same mark that glowed on her skin. He laid it in front of her like an offering. "What is this?" she asked. "The Moonfire Codex," Cassian answered behind her. "It's been missing for 30 years. She brushed her fingertips over the surface. It didn't just hum, it called. Open it, Raiden said. She did. The first page lit up under her touch, revealing ink that shimmered like liquid light. The final Luna will not be chosen. She will be remembered. Her heart thudded in her ears. Raiden leaned in. You weren't rejected, Era. You were returned to the path they tried to steal from you. She couldn't speak. Not yet. But something inside her had changed. Not a switch. A gate. Opening. And she was no longer afraid of what was on the other side. Because remembering was only the first step. Now, she had to decide what to do with the truth. He showed up with blood on his shirt. No announcement. No footsteps. Just there. Standing at the edge of the forest like the storm had carved him out of lightning and shame. Era felt him before she saw him. The air shifted. Her wolf rose. Not in fear. In warning. Cassian stepped forward first, hand on the dagger at his hip, but Era lifted one hand. She didn't take her eyes off the figure standing between the trees. Kalen. Still taller than she remembered, still cold, still carrying that look in his eyes like he ruled the mountain, even while standing in the dirt. But there was something else now. Desperation. Raiden stood without a word. The tension between the two males burned like wildfire in a dry forest. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. They'd met before. Of course they had. Kalen's voice cracked the air. I didn't come to fight. Raiden's eyes didn't move from him. You're too late for everything else. Era's heartbeat pounded. You're not welcome here, she said. Kalen flinched, just barely. I know. Then why are you here? He stepped forward, slowly, hands empty. I didn't know the truth until after the ceremony, he said. By the time I realized what they'd done, you were gone. You rejected me, she said, her voice sharp, too calm. In front of everyone. I thought I was protecting the pack. I thought you were a mistake, a manipulated bond. You don't know how many lies I was fed. Era laughed, short, bitter. You think I care what you thought? I think you care that they're coming for you. That shut her up. The air froze. Raiden moved first. Who? Kalen looked directly at Era now. The Council of Elders issued a bloodbound sanction this morning. You're not just rogue anymore. You're considered a threat to the entire alliance. Era's mouth went dry. They're hunting you, Kalen continued. Not to bring you in. To end you. Quietly. Cleanly. Cassian cursed under his breath. How do you know? Era asked. Kalen's jaw tightened. Because they asked me to do it. No one spoke for a full minute. The fire crackled. The trees rustled. Era stood still as stone. You were supposed to kill me? She whispered. Kalen met her gaze. I was supposed to make it look like an accident. And instead you ran to warn me? I'm not asking you to forgive me, Era. I'm trying to fix what I can before it's too late. She laughed again, this time without bitterness. You think there's something left to fix? He stepped closer. I didn't know you were pregnant. Raiden's eyes glowed. Watch your next words carefully. Kalen didn't flinch. I know they're not mine. Era nodded. You're right. They're not. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain? Regret? Maybe. But too little. Too late. They're moonfire, Kalen said, and that makes them targets. Her spine straightened. They're children. They're symbols, he said. To the wrong people, symbols are more dangerous than soldiers. He stepped closer, not too close, just enough for her to see what guilt really looked like on the face of a man who had once called her unworthy. I didn't come here for redemption, he said. I came to tell you the truth. Raiden's voice was low. Start talking. Kalen took a slow breath. The elders knew what you were before you were born. That's why your mother was silenced. That's why you were marked. They didn't want the Moonfire prophecy to resurface, and now that you're carrying heirs, they believe the timeline has accelerated. Timeline? Era asked. They think the return of a Moonfire bearer signals the fall of the Council. Raiden cursed. And they're right. Kaelin turned to him. You've known all along, haven't you? Raiden didn't answer. Era cut in. So what now? You came to give me a warning? Deliver your message and disappear? Kaelin hesitated. No, he said. I came to help. Raiden took a step forward, voice low and lethal. You had your chance. You left her in that circle and walked away. Kaelin turned to Era, his voice softer now. I didn't fight for you then. I see that. I won't make the same mistake again. The silence thickened. She wanted to scream, cry, hurt him the way he'd hurt her. But she didn't. Because deep down, she knew he was telling the truth, and that terrified her more than anything. Cassian cleared his throat. If what you're saying is true, then we've got about 3 days before a sanctioned hit squad crosses into neutral land. Era looked at Raiden, then at Kaelin. 2 wolves, both powerful, both connected to her. One had rejected her, the other had risked everything to protect her. And now, they were both here, both staring at her, waiting. For what? For her to choose? No. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about the fire in her blood, the life inside her. The truth that had been buried for years, and if they thought she was going to run again, they didn't understand who she was becoming, because Era Langley wasn't going to hide anymore. And if they came for her, they'd find something far worse than a scared girl. They came at dusk, not with snarls or shouts, no sound at all, just silence. And scent, steel, burnt salt, silver-laced leather. Era smelled them before she saw them. 3 distinct trails, 2 flanking, 1 approaching from the rear. They weren't wolves, not fully, and that was what made it worse. The wind shifted. Her wolf snapped to attention. Move, Raiden growled, already pulling her back from the fire circle. They're close. Cassian didn't ask questions. He started tracing a ward into the dirt with crushed bone. Kaelin stood in front of her like a shield, shoulders squared, jaw tight, the kind of posture that said he knew who was coming. Tell me they're not Council blood trackers, she whispered. Kaelin didn't answer, and that was the answer. The first strike came without warning. A silver dart slammed into the tree 2 inches from her face. It hissed, smoked. A paralytic. They weren't here to fight. They were here to disable. To capture. Raiden's hand clamped around her wrist. Now. Run. She hesitated. No. They don't want you dead, he snapped. But they'll take the twins if they get you. That's worse. Cassian's voice came from behind the trees. The wards won't hold if she doesn't move. She's pulling too much. Too late. The second dart grazed her shoulder. Not a direct hit, just enough. Heat burst beneath her skin. Not pain, not poison. Something deeper, like it was burning through the seal. Her wolf let out a sound, one she'd never heard before. A howl mixed with a scream, and suddenly, the ground cracked beneath her. She dropped to one knee. The earth trembled under her palm. Tiny fissures stretched out from where her fingers dug into the soil. Not normal, not reflex, not survival. This was reaction. The seal on her abdomen flared. The pendant against her chest grew hot, white hot. Symbols she'd never seen pulsed in the dirt. Ancient ones. Cassian swore loudly. She's channeling. Raiden! That's raw moonfire! Raiden's hand clamped down on her shoulder. Era, look at me. She couldn't. Her eyes were glowing now. She felt it. Her body vibrating with energy that wasn't fully hers. The twins were awake inside her. And they weren't afraid. They were angry. "Let me fight," she whispered, voice low, hoarse. "Let me use it." "You don't know how," Raiden said. "I don't care." The first hunter broke through the tree line, tall, masked, no scent, just an eerie stillness. A blade gleamed in one hand, dark steel etched with runes meant to disrupt shifting. Kalen didn't wait. He launched forward with a roar, shifted mid-stride, silver fur exploding across his body. The hunter met him with terrifying calm. Claws clashed against steel. The sound cracked through the woods like lightning hitting stone. Cashin grabbed Era's arm, yanking her behind a fallen log. "They'll kill him." "No," she said. "They will. These aren't soldiers. These are cleaners, designed for one thing, to wipe out divine bloodlines without leaving evidence." Her heart thudded. "Then why am I still alive?" "Because your power hasn't fully awakened yet. They're here to take you, to finish what the council started." Her hand pressed against her belly. The twins. They were awake, wide awake, and they were sending her something. Not words, not thoughts, instinct. "Stand." She did. The second hunter leapt from the trees, heading for Raiden. Era stepped into its path. Cassian screamed her name, but it was too late to stop her. The moment her bare feet hit the center of the clearing, the pendant around her neck shattered. Not with a bang, with a sound like breaking glass underwater, soft, eerie, final. And just like that, the seal was gone. Power surged through her in a wave so violent it dropped her to her knees. Not light, not darkness, moonfire. It didn't feel like fire. It felt like gravity, like something older than the moon itself had just crawled into her bloodstream and said, "Finally." The second hunter raised his blade. Too slow. The earth cracked again. Roots burst from the soil, curling upward like claws, wrapping around his legs and yanking him backward. He didn't even scream. The woods went dead quiet. Era stood, breath ragged, light swirling around her skin like threads of smoke. Raiden watched her like she was something he hadn't expected. Kalen stared at her like he'd just seen a ghost. Cassian just whispered, "Goddess, help us." She stepped forward. No fear now, no hesitation, just understanding. This was never just about survival, not about revenge, or bloodlines, or broken bonds. This was about awakening, about claiming what was hers before someone else decided to bury it again. The third hunter stepped out of the trees, slower than the others, taller, no mask. She knew his face. One of the council's executioners. He didn't raise his weapon. He looked right at her, and he smiled, because they hadn't come to kill her. They'd come to test what she was becoming. The dream didn't feel like a dream. It felt real, heavy, weighted with something older than language. Era stood in a clearing flooded with moonlight so pure it didn't cast shadows. The air shimmered, the trees bent toward her like they knew her. In the center of it all, a woman, draped in silver, barefoot on wet grass, skin the color of candle smoke, eyes pale like fog. The moon priestess, not a vision, not a myth. She was real, and she had been waiting. "You called me?" Era whispered. The woman didn't speak right away. She only tilted her head, watching Era with something close to sorrow, or reverence. "No," the priestess finally said. "You called yourself." The wind stirred. "Then what is this?" Era asked. "Why now?" The woman stepped closer, and her voice dropped like a stone into a still lake. "Because you're waking up. And the children inside you are listening." Era's hand instinctively found her belly. The warmth there pulsed like twin flames, no longer quiet, no longer hidden. "Are they in danger?" The priestess shook her head. "Not in the way you think." Era frowned. "Then why is everyone trying to take them?" The woman studied her a long time. Because your children are not just heirs. They're thresholds, living vessels, gatekeepers between what was and what will come. Era's breath caught. The council believes they are a prophecy fulfilled, the woman continued. But they're wrong. They're not the end. They're the beginning. The dream shimmered again, changed. Suddenly, Era stood in a temple without walls, stars swirling overhead. The floor glowed with runes, each one pulsing beneath her bare feet like a heartbeat. The priestess was behind her now. "Look," she said softly. And Era did. There were 2 cradles carved of stone, floating above the runes. In one, a girl, eyes open, golden and wide, already glowing. In the other, a boy, smaller, still, but smiling, as if he knew exactly what he'd been born to carry. Her throat tightened. "They're mine," she whispered. "They are," the priestess said, "but not only yours." Era turned slowly. "Then whose?" The priestess stepped closer, gaze full of knowing. "They belong to the Moonblood, the last of a divine thread your ancestors bled for." Era shook her head. "I'm not ready. I can't even control it. I don't know how to protect them." The woman smiled gently. "You don't need to be ready. You need to be willing." And then everything went dark. She woke up gasping. The forest was still. The fire was out. Raiden was at her side in seconds. "You were gone," he said. "You weren't breathing." She clutched his arm, shaking. "I saw her. I saw them." He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. He saw it in her face. The change. She stood up, still shaky, still barefooted. "I know what they are now," she said. "I know why the council wants them." Cassian stepped into the clearing, hands dusty from old spell work. "You remember the prophecy?" "I remember enough." Raiden stood now too. "Tell us." Era exhaled slowly. "The prophecy said the moonfire would return through blood, not through bond, not through mating or ceremony." She met Raiden's eyes. "It was never about mates. It was about rebirth." Cassian let out a slow breath. "So, the twins, they're reincarnated?" "No," Era said. "They're more dangerous than that. They're new souls. Yes, but they carry echoes. Power meant to be inherited." Raiden's jaw clenched. "That's why the council's afraid." "They should be," she said. The rest of the night passed without a sound, but the forest didn't feel safe anymore. Not even with Raiden and Cassian nearby. Something in the shadows was watching, waiting. The executioner who smiled, the one who didn't strike. He hadn't run. He'd disappeared. And Era couldn't stop thinking about that grin. He'd seen what she could do, and he wasn't afraid. That meant he wasn't finished. At dawn, the pain started. Not sharp, not labor, but a deep pull, twisting low in her abdomen like fire dragging itself through bone. She doubled over. Raiden caught her. Cassian reached her side in a blink. "They're not due yet," she gasped. "It's not time." Cassian pressed a glowing hand against her back. "It's not delivery," he muttered. "It's activation." Raiden's eyes narrowed. "What the hell does that mean?" Cassian looked up, panic flashing behind his calm. "They're trying to shift." Time stopped. Era's world narrowed to her body, and the 2 sparks flaring inside her. "No," she gasped. "They can't. They're not ready." "They're not trying to shift into wolves," Cassian said. Raiden's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then what?" Cassian's voice broke. "They're trying to shift into what they were before they were born." Era screamed. Light exploded from her skin. The pendant was gone. The seal was broken. And now, there was nothing holding them back. nothing anchoring the divine inside the human. Raiden caught her before she hit the ground, but he was burning just from touching her. The energy seeping from her body wasn't magic. It was creation. Pure. Unfiltered. Cassian staggered back, shielding his face. Era convulsed in Raiden's arms, mouth open in a silent cry. And then, everything stopped. The light, the fire, the pain, gone. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked down at her belly. Still. Quiet. Normal. "Are they?" Raiden asked, voice hoarse. Era shook her head. "No." She touched her stomach. "They're just waiting." Because the twins weren't coming early, they were just reminding her who would have to survive for them to arrive. The firelight danced like it knew what was coming. Era stood at the edge of the ancient circle, breath sharp, feet bare against the earth. This place wasn't for ordinary wolves. It had only ever been used for coronations or executions. The trees surrounding the ring bent inward, heavy with secrets. The air buzzed with waiting, and somewhere deep below her feet, the moonfire inside her stirred. Cassian had drawn the runes with ground bone and midnight salt. Raiden stood behind her, silent, not touching her, just watching. Even Kalen had kept his distance. She was the only one allowed inside the circle now, the only one who could survive it. "You're sure about this?" Cassian asked. "No," she said, "but I'm doing it anyway." Her hands trembled, not from fear, from something deeper. The tension of a bloodline stretching toward awakening. The ceremony of power wasn't just ritual. It was risk. If her body couldn't hold what her blood had inherited, it would tear her apart. But if it could, then no elder, no hunter, no wolf or warlock would be able to stop her, and the twins would never be hunted again. Cassian began the invocation. His voice dropped low, into a language no one taught, only remembered. The symbols in the dirt glowed blue, then silver, then gold. The wind shifted, the light changed, the world tilted on its axis, and the sky began to burn. It wasn't flame, it was memory. The air shimmered with echoes, flashes of other moonfire vessels across time, women standing in the same circle, some crowned, some consumed. Era stood still as the memories passed through her, each one like a spark against her skin. Then, her mother, young, strong, pregnant and afraid. And next to her, the same priestess from her dream, whispering something she couldn't hear, holding her mother's face, marking her with a crescent carved into ash. And then, Era herself, infant, wrapped in dark cloth, hidden in firelight. It wasn't just blood she carried, it was a promise. The vision vanished. The runes flared again, brighter now, brighter than the sun. The light burned the tips of the trees. Raiden and Cassian both stepped back. Era dropped to her knees. Pain flared deep in her spine, climbing upward like a rising wave. Her fingers dug into the earth. Her body shook. Her wolf howled inside her, not in fear but in resistance. This wasn't a natural shift. It was an unbinding. Every spell ever placed on her, every root of silence, every lie layered in her bones, was unraveling. Her skin blistered. Her heartbeat shattered and rebuilt itself. And then she rose. Her eyes opened. No longer brown, not gold, not silver. They glowed white-blue, lit from within like moonstone. The runes faded. The wind stilled. The silence after the storm. Era stood in the center of the circle, breathing slow, steady. Not just shifted, changed. Her hair floated around her shoulders, laced with streaks of silver. Her aura burned so bright Cassian had to turn away. And then, the twins kicked. Hard. Not in panic. In response. because they felt it too. The power, the claiming, the breaking of every boundary that had once tried to cage her. Kalen stepped forward from the tree line. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. She saw it in his face. He finally understood what he'd turned away from, what he'd been told to fear. He wasn't looking at the Omega he rejected. He was looking at the wolf who now stood at the edge of legend, and there was no place left for him in her story. Raiden came to her side as she stepped out of the circle. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just placed a hand over hers. "Do you feel it?" he asked. She nodded. "It's not just me anymore." He looked down at her. "You mean the twins?" "No," she said. "I mean the bloodline, the prophecy, the future." Cassian crossed to her, face still pale. "You've done what no Moonfire Bearer has done in 5 generations. You completed the ceremony without collapse." "What does that mean?" Raiden asked. Cassian looked between them both. "It means she's not a vessel anymore." Raiden's eyes narrowed. "Then what is she?" Cassian's voice dropped. "She's the source." Era didn't speak. Couldn't. Her wolf wasn't silent anymore. It was coiled behind her ribs, fully conscious, fully awake, watching the sky. Waiting. The wind shifted. Raiden turned sharply. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer. Then Cassian said it. "They're coming back." The hunter who'd smiled. He wasn't alone this time. And he wasn't hiding, because the ceremony awakened her power, but now it had drawn the attention of something far older and far more dangerous than the council ever was. She was already bleeding by the time they reached the clearing. Not from a wound, from within, from awakening. The moonfire inside her had reached its limit, not in pain, in purpose. The twins were coming. Not days from now, not weeks, now. Raiden carried her in his arms, his voice rough with panic, shouting instructions to Cassian, who was scrambling to draw protective runes into the forest floor. But Era wasn't panicked. She was quiet, still, because even through the fire tearing through her spine, even with the sky above twisting into a strange silver storm, she felt them. Her children. Not helpless, not afraid. They were calm, ready, and far, far more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The forest bent inward. The air thickened. The ground trembled under her body. Cassian's voice echoed through the trees as he dropped vials of moonroot and ash, drawing barriers that glowed hot against the earth. "We have minutes," he hissed. "If they breach the perimeter before the births are complete." "They won't," Raiden snapped. But even he looked over his shoulder now, because the hunter wasn't hiding anymore. He stood at the tree line, just watching, smiling. Behind him? Others, dozens, not just wolves, not just council agents, hybrids, old ones, creatures forgotten by the younger packs. This wasn't a retrieval anymore. This was annihilation. Era arched on the ground, heat flooding through her body. Raiden knelt beside her, brushing sweat from her temple, whispering her name like a tether. But her eyes were open now, lit from within. She wasn't gone. She was breaking open. The first cry shattered the silence like a lightning strike. It wasn't a scream. It was a song. The girl arrived first. Tiny, perfect, glowing, faintly gold. Her lungs didn't sound mortal. They vibrated through the trees like a bell tolling from the edge of time. The second came moments later, quieter, but with a presence that bent the firelight. The boy. His eyes opened instantly. Silver. Pure silver. Cassian's hands trembled as he lifted them both, whispering words Era didn't understand. Raiden leaned over her, voice thick. "They're safe. You did it." She blinked slowly. Lips cracked. Not yet. Because something else had entered the clearing, not the hunters, something older. The wind dropped, the fire stilled, and in the space between breaths, she arrived, the moon priestess, not in a dream this time. She stepped into the circle barefoot, unblinking, untouched by shadow. She looked at the twins, then at Era. "You broke the seal," she said softly. Era nodded, breath shallow. "I remembered." The priestess stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "You carried the last of the divine lineage. You brought them into a world that forgot its own magic, but you cannot protect them from what's coming if you stay as you are." Era's voice was barely a whisper. "What do I have to give up?" The priestess didn't answer right away. Then, "Your name, your past, everything that once made you small." Raiden stiffened. "No." Era reached for his hand, held it, but she didn't look at him, only at the twins. They weren't just her children. They were the beginning of something new, and what they needed was more than a mother. They needed a shield. "I'm ready," she said. The priestess stood, arms lifted. The moon above flared, unnatural, swollen, sacred. Light poured down in a single beam, covering Era's body like silk. She didn't scream. She let go. Of fear, of anger, of rejection, of Era Langley, and what rose in her place was something ancient, something bright, something the hunters had no name for. The light faded. The twins opened their eyes in unison, and the hunter at the tree line, he stepped back, just once, because for the first time, he looked afraid. Because this wasn't the end of her story. It was only the birth of something the old world thought it had buried forever.